Chapter 8 of the Defiant Agents. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by R.J. Davis. The Defiant Agents by Andre Norton. Chapter 8. They burst through a last wide band of mist into a wilderness of tall grass and shrubs. Travis heard the coyotes give tongue, but it was too late. Out of nowhere whirled a leather loop, settling about his chest, snapping his arms tight to his body, taking him off his feet with a jerk to be dragged helplessly along the ground behind a galloping horse. A tawny fury sprung in the air to snap at the horse's head. Travis kicked fruitlessly, trying to regain his feet as the horse reared and fought against the control of his shouting rider. All through the melee, the Apache heard Kaydessa shrilly screaming words he did not understand. Travis was on his knees, coughing in the dust, exerting the muscles in his chest and shoulders to loosen the lariat. On either side of him, the coyotes wove a snarling pattern of defiance, dashing back and forth to present no target for the enemy, yet keeping the excited horses so stirred up that their riders could use neither ropes nor blades. Then Kaydessa ran between two of the ringing horses to Travis and jerked at the loop about him. The tough braided leather eased its hold, and he was able to gasp in full lungfuls of air. She was still shouting, but the tone had changed from one of recognition to a definite scolding. Travis won to his feet just as the rider who had lassoed him finally got his horse under rein and dismounted. Holding the rope, the man walked hand over hand toward them, as Travis back in the Arizona range would have approached a nervous, unschooled pony. The Mongol was an inch or so shorter than the Apache, and his face was young, though he had a drooping mustache bracketing his mouth with slender spear points of black hair. His breeches were tucked into high red boots, and he wore a loose felt jacket patterned with the same elaborate embroidery Travis had seen on Kaydessa's. On his head was a hat with a wide fur border, in spite of the heat, and that too bore touches of scarlet and gold design. Still holding his lariat, the Mongol reached Kaydessa and stood for a moment, eyeing her up and down before he asked a question. She gave an impatient twitch to the rope. The coyote snarled, but the Apache thought the animals no longer considered the danger imminent. "This is my brother, Hulagur." Kaydessa made the introduction over her shoulder. "He does not have your speech." Hulagur not only did not understand, he was also impatient. He jerked at the rope with such sudden force that Travis was almost thrown. Then Kaydessa dragged as furiously on the lariat in the other direction and burst into a soaring harangue which drew the rest of the men closer. Travis flexed his upper arms, and the slack gained by Kaydessa's action made the lariat give again. He studied the Tatar outlaws. There were 5 of them besides Hulagur. Lean men, hard-faced, narrow-eyed. The ragged clothing of 3 pieced out with scraps of hide. Besides the swords with the curved blades, they were armed with bows, 2 to each man, one long, one shorter. One of the riders carried a lance, long tassels of woolly hair streaming from below its head. Travis saw in them a formidable array of barbaric fighting men, but he thought that man for man the Apaches could not only take on the Mongols with confidence, but might well defeat them. The Apache had never been a hot-headed, ride-for-glory fighter like the Cheyenne, the Sioux, and the Comanche of the open plains. He estimated the odds against him, used ambush, trick, and every feature of the countryside as weapon and defense. 15 Apache fighting men under Chief Geronimo had kept 5,000 American and Mexican troops in the field for a year and had come off victorious for the moment. Travis knew the tales of Genghis Khan and his formidable generals who swept over Asia into Europe, unbeaten and seemingly undefeatable. But they had been a wild wave, fed by a reservoir of manpower from the steppes of their homeland, utilizing driven walls of captives to protect their own men in city assaults and attacks. He doubted if even that endless sea of men could have won the Arizona desert defended by Apaches under Cochise, Victorio, or Magnus Colorado. The white man had done it by superior arms and attrition, but bow against bow, knife against sword, craft and cunning against craft and cunning, he did not think so. Hulagur dropped the end of the lariat and Kaydessa swung around, loosening the loop so that the rope fell to Travis's feet. The Apache stepped free of it, turned, and passed between two of the horsemen to gather up the bow he had dropped. The coyotes had gone with him, and when he turned again to face the company of Tatars, both animals crowded past him to the entrance of the valley, plainly urging him to retire there. The horsemen had faced about also, and the warrior with the lance balanced the shaft of the weapon in his hand as if considering the possibility of trying to spear Travis. But just then Kaydessa came up, towing Hulagur by a firm hold on his sash belt. "I have told this one," she reported to Travis, "how it is between us, and that you also are enemy to those who hunt us. It is well that you sit together beside a fire and talk of these things." Again that boom boom broke her speech, coming from farther out in the open land. "You will do this?" She made of it a half question, half statement. Travis glanced about him. He could dodge back into the misty valley of the towers before the Tatars could ride him down. However, if he could patch up some kind of truce between his people and the outlaws, the Apaches would have only the Reds from the settlement to watch. Too many times in Terran past had war on two fronts been disastrous. "I come, carrying this, and not pulled by your ropes." He held up his bow in an exaggerated gesture so that Hulagur could understand. Coiling the lariat, the Mongol looked from the Apache bow to Travis. Slowly, and with obvious reluctance, he nodded agreement. At Hulagur's call, the lancer rode up to the waiting Apache, stretched out a booted foot in the heavy stirrup, and held down a hand to bring Travis up behind him, riding double. Kaydessa mounted in the same fashion behind her brother. Travis looked at the coyotes. Together the animals stood in the door to the tower valley, and neither made any move to follow as the horses trotted off. He beckoned with his hand and called to them. Heads up, they continued to watch him go in company with the Mongols. Then, without any reply to his coaxing, they melted back into the mist. For a moment Travis was tempted to slide down and run the risk of taking a lance point between the shoulders as he followed Naginta and Nalikianadu into retreat. He was startled, jarred by the new awareness of how much he had come to depend on the animals. Ordinarily, Travis Fox was not one to be governed by the wishes of a Mba, intelligent and unanimal-like as it might be. This was an affair of men, and coyotes had no part in it. Half an hour later, Travis sat in the outlaw camp. There were 15 Mongols in sight, a half dozen women and 2 children adding to the count. On a hillock near their yurts, the round brush and hide shelters, not too different from the wickiups of Travis's own people, was a crude drum. A hide stretched taut over a hollowed section of log, and next to that stood a man wearing tall pointed cap, a red robe, and a girdle from which swung a fringe of small bones, tiny animal skulls, and polished bits of stone and carved wood. It was this man's efforts which sent the boom boom sounding at intervals over the landscape. Was this a signal, part of a ritual? Travis was not certain, though he guessed that the drummer was either medicine man or shaman, and so of some power in this company. Such men were credited with the ability to prophesy